This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey, this is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn, and what we do in this podcast is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life, change your business, change your career, but most importantly, change your life. Super excited to be here. This is a solo podcast. I love when we have guests, but I also love when I'm here by myself because I'm just bringing dangerous ideas from other people. But because of course, we will have guests on and I will prompt them with dangerous ideas. But I think some of the best episodes is me just bringing in dangerous ideas, things that I've seen on the internet, around, talking to people. So I have a whole bunch of dangerous ideas for you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the first dangerous idea. And this dangerous idea is that this revolution is no different than any other. This revolution is no different than any other. A lot of people have been concerned about this idea of artificial intelligence and how it's going to be impacting jobs. And, am I going to lose my jobs? Will robots take my job? Is the number one question that people are asking. And I thought Chamath Palihapitiya on the All In podcast on last week's episode had a really great observation of what we've seen throughout history when it comes to artificial intelligence and productivity and what it does to our incomes. And let's drop the clip.
Okay. And I call this time it's not different. So chart number one for those watching on YouTube is a look at the components of US GDP. This is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Now, this goes from 1929 up to 2011. So it doesn't go all the way back to the 1800s, and we're missing the last decade. But the point is the following. If you can see the chart, if you can't see it, I'll describe it to you, which is that GDP, the components of GDP are surprisingly resilient and roughly the same over long stretches of time, which is that even though GDP goes up, consumer consumption is always around 70%. Net exports are a few percent plus or minus. Gross domestic investment is around the 20% level. And then government consumption is around the 20% level. And that's what adds up to GDP. So that's an important thing to note. Why? Because in the absence of something very acute like World War II, these things don't change over long periods of time. Okay, so if that is true, what happens when you have any kind of a revolution? So let's look at the Industrial Revolution. So the shift from farms to factories. And what you saw was exactly what people should be worried about with respect to AI, which is in specific job classes, things just fall to zero. So unemployment basically went to zero, and the income associated with those jobs also went to zero. So this is what people are worried about. But if you remember the last chart, the point is somehow we found a way to find growth. And this is what's demonstrated on this final chart, which is when you look at US productivity and worker compensation, this is going from World War II to today, you find that every time we find a new way of innovating, compensation tends to track it. So if you take these three things together, number one, which is the components of GDP rarely change. Number two is that, yes, there are certain categories of jobs that always get disrupted away. But the third is the most important, which is that as productivity goes up, which is what AI should give us, just as we've seen in the past, compensation also goes up, which means new job classes will be created. So I think the macro picture, if you look back hundreds of years, is that this is like many other moments in time. It feels more personal right now because we're all living it, right? Few of us lived the agrarian to industrial revolution.
Yeah, no, we missed it.
And few of us lived the technological revolution, right? We kind of came in at the heels of it. But I suspect that this time is not different.
I love this idea because throughout human history, we have always found a way. We've always found a way. And we always get nervous in the short term because we're like, well, this technology is going to take our jobs. We're not going to have employment. We're not going to be able to sustain ourselves. But this happens every single time that we find new industries. We find new ways of becoming productive. We leverage the technology at our fingertips. And is this revolution going to be different? It probably is not. And in fact, there was a really interesting piece of research. A great writer, Derek Thompson, I've mentioned before in this podcast, he came up with an article which said that the average work hours for a family unit has always been 67 hours. It's always been 67 hours throughout history. Even in the 2000s, even in the 70s, even in the 20s, it's always been 67 hours. We've always had this idea that every single technological revolution is either going to take jobs, or the other thing, which is it's going to give us this freedom. Like, we're going to be able to relax more. We're going to be able to have more leisure time, which is not the case. Because you know what humans love to do? Humans love to work. It is within our DNA that we love to work. We love, because it brings us identity at the end of the day. And with every single technological revolution, we find a way to work. And so my belief is that we shouldn't be so caught up with if this is going to take our job or not. What we should be doing is doubling down and figuring out what new industries, what new skills that we can build. It's interesting. I was in Houston this week and doing a presentation on generative AI. After I was done the presentation, there was a gentleman in the green room. He asked me a question, which is, what would you say to people that are afraid of this technology? What would you say of people who are fearful of artificial intelligence? And I took a very long time to answer, because I believe this to my core, is that the people that are afraid of artificial intelligence are the same people that have not devoted the time and the effort in playing and experimenting with the technology. I have never met a single person that has been afraid of this technology that is a consumer or an advocate or a user of this technology. Every single person that is proficient in artificial intelligence is optimistic. They're excited. They want to show you all the use cases. They want to tell you how this is going to improve their lives and their businesses. And so if you don't want to be fearful of a technology, then you have to immerse yourself in it. Because once you immerse yourself in the technology, then you will see that actually there is nothing to be afraid of. And actually, this is going to change my trajectory and my company's trajectory and society's trajectory. And so you can't be fearful of the technology. You can only be sort of in the weeds of it. And so I guess maybe I'm an optimist, but listen, at the end of the day, we find a way. We find a way. Listen, when the telephone switch operators, when they lost their jobs, guess what? They found a way. They did something else. When the taxi drivers, when Uber came in and disrupted their entire industry, listen, they found a way. Some of them went on Uber. Some of them got other jobs. Some of them doubled down on becoming incredible, better taxi drivers. We always find a way. And maybe that's the most dangerous idea. Maybe that's the dangerous idea, is that humans always find a way. So don't be so scared. All right, number 2. This dangerous idea it's a really dangerous idea, which is, what is the ROI on fakeness? What is the ROI on fakeness? There's this podcast with Andrew Schultz, Akash Singh, called Flagrant. And a number of weeks ago, they had a great rapper on. His name is Russ. Russ is an incredible rapper, and I think one of the reasons why he's heralded is because he is one of the few popular hip hop artists that is actually independent. He is an independent artist. He doesn't have a label behind him, and he's been able to build his own audience. He's built his own shows, and he has a direct relationship with his fans, and it's part of the reason why he's so popular. And this podcast he did on Flagrant, I re-listened to it a couple times during that time because I think he has a really good perspective on what it means to be a creator. And I think the most interesting part of this podcast is him talking about how the labels basically buy number one hits. In the clip that you're going to hear, he says that in order to get a number one song, it costs about $70,000. And what a crazy question to ask. How much does it cost to get a number one song? How much does it cost to get a number one song? That's a dangerous question. Let's use that question for other things. How much does it cost to become the prime minister of this country? How much does it cost to get a number one song? How much does it cost to get a number one book? How much does it cost to become the best team in the NHL? How much does it cost to get to become the number one boxer in the world? Usually these things, it's blasphemous to say that it costs money. We always think that things are based on merit. But if you think about the ROI and fakeness, maybe this actually applies to many things in life. So I'm going to drop this clip and see what you think.
Fucking artists with the streams.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're doing it, but it feels like they're doing it.
Yeah.
And how are they tricking us? Because I see these people that go crazy, album goes number one, but then they can't fill up a show.
Right.
So the math is not math.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is.
But explain it.
I mean, so it's one of those things that like everyone in the industry knows is going on.
Which is?
Faking the streams. It's a real thing.
So the label buys the streams from Spotify?
So here's the deal. When you talk to these people, because I've talked to these people, because I've been like, what is this? How are y'all doing this? They never disclose the mechanics of like how they actually fake the streams. There's like, rumors of like streaming farms, or we're delving out fucking computers in third world countries and hacking the back end to make it look like it's an IP from the US. Yeah. Whatever, like all this nutty shit. But the reality is the labels are spending money and, devil's advocate, they're treating it like a marketing expense. Because in a sense, it like almost is.
You're going to spend $100,000 on billboards. You're going to spend $100,000 on streams.
Right.
The streams is going to put you in a playlist.
You're going to spend real money to get fake streams that equate to real money. So that's why they think it makes sense. Because it's like, okay, the streams are fake, but the money's real. So what do we care? Especially, they're not doing it with like up-and-coming artists who like you wouldn't believe it. They're doing it with people like where it's, okay, let's say your song has 500 million streams, right? Organically. But let's say with fake streams, now you're at 900 million. No one's gonna sit there and be like, this is more like a 500 million stream song.
Yeah.
They're just gonna be like, this is a big song, makes sense, it has 900 million.
That's honestly so smart.
Yeah, they're not doing it to the dude across the street and giving him 1 billion streams. They're doing it to people who really can get 500 million. But let's just pump it to get 900.
Now you're getting number one.
Now you get number one.
So you can pay for a number one.
Oh yeah. What?
What does the number one cost? I mean, that's crazy to even think about that.
I mean,
what does a number one song in America cost?
Look, the reality is this. You do have to have a real fan base to a certain extent. Right? You have to have people who are really consuming the music. And your song has to actually be moving around organically. Once it's that, then they'll push the button on it. And it just depends, like it's a campaign. It could be like, it's like a 12-week campaign and it might be 60 grand, 70 grand, whatever it is.
That's it.
And it's, oh yeah.
To have the number one song
and
on
that
Spotify.
70 grand, the ROI is crazy because that 70 grand might bring you back 200, 300.
Yeah.
what does a number one song in America cost? I guess in this case, 70 grand. And, is it blasphemous? Is it blasphemous to fake the streams so that it can generate more revenue later? Let's think about other mediums. Is it blasphemous to get somebody an incredible education at Harvard and pay for their, get somebody into Harvard, pay for their tuition, pay for your children's tuition, and give them a better opportunity so that they can make more money later? Do they get into Harvard? Like if you pay off Harvard, if you give a incredible donation, and then obviously your kid is more likely to get into Harvard because of that donation. And then in the long run, perhaps your kid has a better chance of creating income later. Is there something wrong with that? It's a really interesting question, because at the end of the day, you're generating real revenue, but the way that you get there is not so real. What is the ROI on fakeness? When I was coming out with my book, The Bold Ones, I got pitched everything. I got pitched everything from how I can put my book on collaborate with these particular platforms to boost the sales, how I can, do these book, like, I don't know, like these, like you would pay to get these book reviews. And I didn't do any of this, but I did go far with a company, and what they do, and they do this through a legitimate way, is they actually on launch day, they buy your books across America, I guess, and they legitimately work with other like universities and colleges to get these books in the hands of the right people. And I was really far in that process. And at the end, I would say like 3 weeks before, I was like, there is something really inauthentic about this, about getting like a New York Times bestseller. And I literally pulled the plug on it because I did not want to be, I just felt dirty by, making that happen. And, I just wanted the book to be, relevant on its own. And guess what? It didn't hit the New York Times bestseller. It didn't hit the Wall Street Journal. And maybe if it did, actually we were really close to the Wall Street Journal, but maybe if it did, maybe I would be a different place. Maybe the book would be a different place. And I think the idea here is that, and I get why the labels do this. I get why they do this, because we don't value what's important. We value what's in front of us. And that's a very important distinction. When something is in front of us and the broader world says that this is important or this is popular, we are more likely to pay attention to it, to buy it, to watch it. I mean, it happens with everything. I'll give you a great example. Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Is it important? Probably not. Jake Paul is not even a professional boxer. He's an amateur boxer. Mike Tyson is almost 60 years old. Is this fight important? No. But guess what? It's on our social media. It's in front of the news. And we're going to watch it because that's what it seems like it's important, because it's in front of us. And we do this with almost everything. We value what's in front of us. And this is what the labels have figured out. Listen, they're going to boost the views to get a number one song at 70K, because at the end, they're going to make more money on the concert, on the merch, on everything else. So is it wrong to fake the streams in order to generate revenue? Now, of course, inherently, it's not good to fake anything. We know that to be true, but does every company sort of do this at the end of the day? I remember listening to how Reddit started. And the way that Reddit started is that the founders, they created fake accounts and they had fake conversations in order to boost the organic engagement so that people would see that Reddit was a relevant site. And guess what? Reddit IPO'd last month, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And I go to Reddit all the time, right? And so Reddit is still a relevant company, but it started on this idea of fakeness. And so it's a really interesting concept on the idea of what is the ROI on fakery, on fakeness. And maybe we should be thinking about how do we fake things in order to get in front of more people. Now, in different contexts, but I think you have to be okay with it, yourself. Like if you're like, in my case, I felt uncomfortable with it, but it's just a really interesting concept that a lot of marketers and a lot of people have used in order to boost their own brands, in order to make more revenue at the end of the day. And they've basically faked it and they made it. So I love this idea. The next dangerous idea is another sort of marketing idea. This is from another individual that we've referenced before in this podcast. His name is Rory Sutherland, one of the best marketing minds on the planet. And he was at a talk where he talked about the opposite of a good idea can often be another good idea. The opposite of a good idea can often be another good idea. Here's a clip of him talking about that concept and how he experienced this himself.
What I discovered is actually quite often in marketing, the opposite of a good idea is another good idea. And I've got a story to tell you about this, which is slightly distasteful, but I'll tell it anyway, which is I'm about to go on stage about 4 years ago, and I'm wearing beige trousers. And as all speakers do, you go to the loo 8 minutes before you go on stage. I don't know why, you just have to, okay? And unfortunately, the wash basin went into spasm and deposited a huge amount of water on the front of my trousers. So I was thinking, what do I do here? Do I just do a runner, okay? What do I do? And I tried the hand dryer, and it was hopeless, okay? I'd have had to stand there actually char-grilling my own genitals in order to have any effect for about half an hour. And I went outside in desperation, and then a miracle happened. It started to rain really heavily. And I went out into the street and just stood in the rain, okay, for about 10 minutes before I went on stage. Now, admittedly, the people in the audience thought, why has this man fallen into a swimming pool, okay? But it was better than the alternative. So sometimes the solution is to dry the wet bit, and sometimes the solution is to wet everything else. The opposite of a good idea can be another good idea. And once you think backwards, you notice that all the time.
Brilliant example, great marketer, great story. And you see this with brands all the time. You see this with companies. The opposite of a good idea can be another good idea. My favorite example is probably Snapchat. When Snapchat came out, it was pretty unique and revolutionary because we created this world pre-2013 or pre-2012 where we would share everything, that everything would be public, that everything would be for everyone to see. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, we were sharing like crazy. But in Snapchat's case, it was their value prop was that it was ephemeral, that something would disappear in 24 hours. And the idea of something disappearing and not being saved and being private, but still being up for a certain period of time was a really, really unique idea. And it promoted the idea of privacy and it promoted this idea of sharing something with close friends. And it's part of the reason why it blew up. Facebook was a good idea, but the opposite was a good idea as well, which was Snapchat. And if you look at some of the best brands, they're kind of like this too. I mean, you look at a company like Liquid Death, right? Sounds like a really bad idea. But you have traditional water companies that are about, they're about health and sustainability and freshness. And then literally you have a company called Liquid Death And it is one of the most popular waters in the world. I mean, it's actually probably one of the most popular brands that has come up over the last 5 years that has name recognition, which is Liquid Death. So a really great idea. Beats by Dre. You know, the ethos of Beats by Dre was that Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, they wanted to come together, and they said the existing headphone market was crap, that it wasn't artisan, it wasn't how music should be heard. It was all like these little like earbuds, you know, there were wires attached to it, and it didn't look good, it didn't sound good. And so these two music icons like got in the lab, worked with some great folks and created Beats by Dre. Apple bought them out, great buy. And it was literally the opposite of what everyone was doing. And so I love this idea that, you know, whenever we look at a particular product or a service or a company, think about the opposite, and you actually will probably find another great company. You know, Walmart is a great example. Listen, Walmart is a great company. They offer things for incredible prices, and then it's incredibly abundant. And the opposite of Walmart is Hermes. Hermes or LV, their stuff is incredibly scarce. In Hermes's case, you have to like buy a certain amount of product to buy like their most high-end products, and it's incredibly scarce. And guess what? It's an incredibly valuable company too. Same thing with digital and analog. Something that is extremely digital, guess what? The opposite of something that's like extremely digital, online, 24/7 is actually something that is analog and tangible and in person. And so the opposite of a good idea can also be another good idea. And I love that idea. And it just means that you can innovate in all sorts of ways. And so I love that story from Rory Sutherland. And it just shows you that there's so many opportunities out there. Okay, so the next idea is this. When I was in Barcelona in November, I met an incredible author and thinker. Her name is Rachel Botsman. And we had a really awesome conversation. She's like one of the most well-read people that you will meet. And I think at the time that we were talking about Sam Bankman-Fried and a whole bunch of other things, she was following me after one of our keynotes. I did the opening keynote. She was doing a keynote right after me. She's incredible. And she is the authority when it comes to trust and the idea of trust. Incredible thinker, incredible person. And, you know, recently I've been talking a lot about trust because clients have been asking me in this world of AI, what does this do with trust and what's its impact on innovation? So I've been diving deeper into research and working with people and talking to people about this intersection between AI, trust, and innovation. And of course, I can't talk about this idea of trust without going back to, you know, one of the greatest of all time, Rachel Botsman, and deep diving into her work and her ideas when it comes to trust. And I thought she had a really great piece around this idea of a trust leap. And I'm going to drop the clip and see what you have to think.
Now, what's happening here is what I call a trust leap. So whenever you're asking someone to try a new product or service, you're asking them to take a trust leap. Now, a trust leap is basically when we're asking someone to take a risk or to do something, to take a risk to do something new or to do something in a fundamentally different way. And the first time we take a trust leap, it feels weird. It feels scary, even frightening, because we don't know what the outcome may be. Now, the brilliant thing is that human beings are really good at taking trust leaps, especially when we've seen other people take trust leaps. We are very quick to follow. And we've become so good at taking trust leaps that it's really easy to forget that we're asking people to leap faster and higher than ever before. This is one of the reasons why we feel so much change. This is one of the reasons why we feel so much uncertainty, in that the number of trust leaps that we're being asked to take in all different areas of our lives is completely unprecedented.
Love that. Trust leap. Woo-hoo-hoo. So I love this. I love this dangerous idea, trust leap, so much, because it is so true that we're constantly asking people, hey, try my service, try my product, look at this piece of content. And it forces people to, when they're trying something that's new, you're asking them to take a leap when it comes to trust. You're asking them to do something that they've never done before. And the wording that she uses is really interesting, because she says, in order to take a trust leap, you basically are asking somebody to do something that is new to them. And guess what the definition of innovation is? Innovation is this idea of how do you create value in new ways? And so when you are innovating, you're essentially asking other people to say, hey, come on my journey with me. You've never done this before, but we're going to try this together. And this is why innovation is so tough within organizations, because you're asking somebody to hold their hand to have this leap in trust. And the other interesting point that she made is that we're inundated with trust leaps. We're asking people all the time to change, to take these leaps. And this idea of trust is really interesting, because you have, I think today, trust is so important, right? We need trust in our lives. And, we make a million trust decisions every single day. Like this morning, I got here, I drove my car. I had to trust that everybody else was, being a good driver. My daughter walked to school alone. I had to also make sure that the drivers were, acting appropriately. I had to trust my daughter. I made some French toast this morning. I had to trust that the oven was good. I had to, I trust my phone because I needed to call somebody to move something. So we make a million trust decisions every single day, and we're making these unconscious, it's not even a leap in this case, these unconscious trust decisions every single day. Listen, I trusted that I opened the tap and I drank this water, and I trusted that the water is going to be safe. And so we're always making these unconscious decisions that require trust, but sometimes you need people to make a trust leap. And so anyways, all this to say is that trust is such an important part of innovation. And my belief is that if you want to innovate, if you want people to come on your journey, what you have to do is you have to get them to trust you and trust the thing that you're doing. And my belief, and I keep saying this, is that one of the best ways of doing this is to get more people drunk. Because when you get people drunk, actually what you're understanding is their vulnerabilities, you're understanding their weaknesses, you're understanding where they're coming from. And the more that you can understand them and their vulnerabilities, the more that you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm trying something new. I understand where your fears are, but let's try something small. Let's try a very small experiment. You're literally making it easy for them to hold their hand so that you can try something new. And so I love this idea of a trust leap. And it is helping to reframe how I look at innovation as this idea of trust at the end of the day. So thank you, Rachel, for that. And Rachel's incredible. Check out all her work. An incredibly nice person. Okay, so this next dangerous idea, I don't have a clip for this, but on Sunday was the second night of WrestleMania, and I didn't watch WrestleMania, but I turned over and I was looking at my phone, and I saw that The Undertaker had this brief moment in WrestleMania where The Rock came in the ring and The Undertaker came in and chokeslammed The Rock, and the place went black. And I was reflecting on this dangerous idea of how powerful sound is. It's the power of sound. It's the power of just audio jingles that are familiar to us and how it can just move somebody. Let me give you an example of this. So whenever the Undertaker enters a room, there's always this really eerie sound. It's like a bong. It's like it's this really scary, eerie sound. And all you have to do is play that once, and the entire crowd goes crazy. Play that sound anywhere, and people will know that it's the Undertaker. And it is so fascinating that one sound that will signify the opening to the Undertaker coming is so powerful. It can literally move a room. Go back and watch on YouTube or on Twitter or wherever it is, the Undertaker coming in to the WWE WrestleMania with The Rock, and you could see the room shake. It's very similar to how when The Rock came back into the WWE earlier this year, where he enters in and his sound is, "If you smell," and the entire crowd goes crazy. And I think the WWE does an incredible job at their intros, that their song intros or their entrance music, because it's just like it can create such a strong emotion. And the reason why this is a dangerous idea to me is I'm trying to think, where can I create these powerful audio jingles? And, similar to Netflix, when you go on Netflix, it's like, da-da. Like, my kids inherently know that is Netflix, right? You can be anywhere in the world and you just hear that sound and it's, da-da. But anyways, like, these iconic companies will have these like really cool sort of audio jingles. And I'm just trying to think, how can I have my own audio jingle in order to, say that I'm showing up or something. I don't know. Love it. Okay, so the last dangerous idea is the most. I want to frame this right. The last dangerous idea is engineering the greatest flex. Engineering the greatest flex. Now, I know this is difficult to do, but I recently had an experience where it was probably the greatest flex of my life, okay? So I was with some friends in Houston. Shout out to Bonnie and Sanjay. We went for dinner in Houston. They brought their kids. And this has got to be the greatest flex. The waiter pulled up his phone, and my book, The Bold Ones, was on his Audible. I don't know how that happened. I didn't make the reservation to the dinner, so I didn't have my name on that. He was nowhere near me. And he pulled up, "Hey, I really love your book." And he said that in front of my friends. That's gotta be the greatest flex ever. The waiter has your book and is like, "Hey, I really love your book. I can't wait to complete it." And in front of like your friends that you're just hanging out with. Like, that's gotta be the greatest flex. I actually don't even know how to engineer that, but that's gotta be the greatest flex ever. Is somebody else coming up to you and be like, "Hey, I love your stuff." And because if you say your book is great, it's not gonna land. If they see it on social media, it's not gonna land. But if somebody random in person comes up to you and says, "Hey, this is awesome," in front of your friends or your family, that is the greatest flex ever. I don't even know how that happened, by the way, but Yeah, really cool experience in Houston. So if you want to engineer the greatest flex, I guess just get somebody random, pay a stranger to come up to your friends and be like, hey, I love your stuff, or I love that video that you've done. That's got to be the greatest flex ever. Yeah, so listen, engineer the greatest flex. I really appreciate you guys rocking with me. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. Rate, review, follow, subscribe. It really means a lot. In fact, actually, if you're listening to this on Spotify, I would love for you to actually give it a subscribe on YouTube, because guess what? YouTube is the truth. I love putting this on Spotify and Apple Music and other places, but YouTube is the truth. Give it a follow on subscribe on YouTube. That would really help us out. And we'll see you on the next one.